In a world gripped by the looming threat of war, where news of atrocities often goes overlooked, the tale of North Korea stands out as a chilling reminder of the darkest depths of human depravity. From the 1993 rise of Kim Jong-il to the audacious attempts of his regime to maintain power and influence, the struggles and suffering of the North Korean people are both heartbreaking and alarming. The public persona of Kim Jong-il, famously cloaked in an aura of mystery and grandeur, starkly contrasts with the grim reality faced by the ordinary citizens of North Korea. Under his rule, a tragic journey unfolded, marked by starvation, oppression, and a bizarre cult of personality. With the knowledge that millions suffered in silence while a privileged elite indulged in excess, this narrative compels us to explore the life of Kim Jong-il, a man who commanded an entire nation yet lived in a world of delusion. As we delve into the history of North Korea from 1993 to 2011, we'll unravel the mechanisms of this oppressive regime, explore the stark divides between the lives of the elite and citizens, and examine incidents that put the country's tensions with the world on full display. From heart-wrenching accounts of starvation to bizarre tales of extravagance, we will journey through one of the most secretive nations where the facade of leadership masked a profound moral decay. The narrative of Kim Jong-il and his reign over North Korea is inextricably linked with his mythologized birth on the hallowed grounds of Paektu Mountain in 1942. Celebrated as the Day of the Shining Star, North Korean propaganda insists that a double rainbow appeared and a new bright star shone down from the heavens, heralding the birth of a great leader. Officially, this day is embedded in the national psyche as a 5-day ceremony filled with respect and reverence. Yet the truth is far darker. Kim Jong-il was actually born in 1941 in a Siberian village named Vatko, following in the footsteps of his father, the feared Kim Il-sung. Kim Jong-il ascended to power and showcased an extravagant lifestyle that starkly contrasted with the grim reality faced by the populace. Today, Kim Jong-un rules over a nation still entrenched in poverty and oppression. The Kim dynasty has thrived for decades by building a pervasive cult of personality, tightly controlling information within and beyond its borders. This manipulation of truth is facilitated by one of the world's largest standing armies, providing the regime the power necessary to suppress dissent and maintain control. In North Korean kindergartens, children are taught that just as flowers need sunlight to flourish, they too require the love of the great leader to grow. This indoctrination permeates every facet of society. Upon arriving in Pyongyang, visitors must lay offerings and flowers at the grand statues of Kim Jong-il and his father, an obligatory display of veneration for the ruling family. Independent travel for foreigners is strictly prohibited, much like the everyday lives of ordinary citizens who require permits just to leave the capital. While the citizens of North Korea live under the ever-present threat of famine, Kim Jong-il indulged in a lavish lifestyle characterized by exotic meals. His culinary preferences range from sushi to delicacies such as shark fin soup and roast donkey, often consumed using silver chopsticks and washed down with the finest French wines. It was said that he kept a wine cellar boasting over 10,000 bottles and spent approximately $720,000 annually on Hennessy cognac. In stark contrast, average North Koreans earn less than $2,000 a year and face extremely limited dietary options. For most, breakfast would typically consist of a basic porridge made from corn or maize with powdered milk, while common grocery items included cabbage, cucumbers, and tomatoes. Eggs and meat were considered rare luxuries, and the staple diet primarily revolved around rice, often accompanied by bread made with rancid butter. In fact, the living conditions of the people were so dire that even Kim Jong-il's dogs were better fed, enjoying a diet rich in expensive beef, a food source that common citizens could scarcely imagine. One infamous incident stands out. When Kim Jong-il decided he wanted a taste of McDonald's, he sent a chef to Beijing to purchase hamburgers. Alas, by the time the chef returned, the burgers were cold, yet Kim still consumed them. This experience led him to launch a campaign to provide double bread with meat to university students, a culinary invention resembling hamburgers, reflecting Kim's desperate attempt to address food shortages. In a bizarre twist of ambition, he even sought to breed giant rabbits to alleviate hunger. But when the initial batch of rabbits was sent to North Korea, they were quickly devoured as part of Kim's extravagant birthday feast. While the propaganda machine decorated, Kim Jong-il with various accolades claiming he authored over 1,500 books and starred in films of unmatched quality film and artistic achievements often lacked authenticity. These claims were further complicated by his obsession with cinema. He amassed a vast collection of 15,000 films from around the globe. Faced with the realization that his own cinematic efforts were lifeless and uninspired, Kim decided to improve the quality of North Korean film. To achieve this, he kidnapped South Korean actress Choi Yoon-hee, who he believed could contribute to the film industry. Choi was lured under false pretenses and eventually brought to North Korea, where she was sheltered in luxury. Alongside her, Shin Sang-ok, a prominent South Korean director, was also abducted after Kim's agents had learned of his previous successes and potential. Under coercion, both Choi and Shin were forced to produce propaganda films for the regime. One notable production was Pulgasari, a monster movie that drew inspiration from Godzilla, displaying a giant creature that aided peasants against the ruling elite. Unfortunately for the artists, escaping North Korea would ultimately become their goal, and they achieved it when they fled to the U.S. Embassy in Vienna. In stark contrast to Kim Jong-il's opulence, the daily existence for the North Korean populace was fraught with scarcity. The majority of citizens lived in a state of deprivation marked by limited access to entertainment and resources. The capital, Pyongyang, boasted only 8 cinemas, yet the films featured were strictly propagandistic, portraying North Korea as victorious against its enemies. Communication devices like phones were reserved for high-ranking officials, while the ownership of radios and TVs was monitored by the government to ensure compliance with the regime's programming. As power shortages became the norm under Kim Jong-il, the priority was given to the arms industry, which meant that the national power grid was strained considerably. Power outages were frequent, with recent estimates indicating that only 1 in 4 citizens had reliable access to electricity. Many high-rise apartment dwellers in Pyongyang found themselves forced to rely on stairs rather than elevators during regular outages. Families often attempted to relocate elderly relatives to lower floors, but the process was difficult and often required bribery. Without electricity, apartments became frigid, forcing residents to resort to makeshift insulation methods, such as using plastic sheeting or newspapers. For almost 2 decades, Kim Jong-il ruled with an iron fist, becoming more of a caricature of a tyrant than an effective leader. Following his death in 2011, North Koreans flooded the streets, weeping publicly, a forced display of grief that many knew was necessary for their survival. In a culture where the ability to mourn authentically for the deceased leader was a matter of life and death, students were keenly aware that their futures could hinge on their capacity to perform sorrow. In the late 1990s, life for South Korean fishermen was relatively tranquil, marked by abundance thanks to an expanding fishing industry. However, tensions loomed close at hand due to ongoing disputes with Chinese authorities over fishing rights and a state-driven scheme that aimed to boost efficiency by sidelining smaller fishing vessels. But one fateful day in the summer of 1998, life was turned upside down for a crew of fishermen when they made an unexpected catch a North Korean Yugo-class submarine entangled in their nets. As the submarine surfaced, the fishermen watched in disbelief as its crew scrambled to cut free from the netting, only to be silent moments later, stuck adrift in South Korean waters. The distressed fishermen immediately reported the occurrence, prompting the South Korean Navy to dispatch helicopters to investigate. Incredibly, the submarine floating on the surface was initially ignored, leading the Navy to take action by surrounding it with vessels, attempting to make contact via radio and loudspeakers. Despite all attempts to communicate going unheeded, the South Korean Navy secured the submarine with a long rope and began towing it into the port of Tong. Just 2 years prior, another North Korean submarine had been caught trying to infiltrate South Korean territory, a captured vessel that now sat proudly on display at the Unification Park, allowing visitors to explore its remnants. However, while towing the Yugo-class submarine, disaster struck as it mysteriously sank, disappearing with its entire crew into the depths of the sea, leaving the South Korean authorities in shock. When the North Korean government issued a press release a day later downplaying the incident as a training accident, few outside observers bought their narratives. It wasn't until 2 days later that the South Korean Navy successfully salvaged the wreckage, uncovering 9 bodies within. Disturbingly, 4 were North Korean Special Forces operatives, while the remaining 5 were submariners from the North Korean Navy. Preliminary reports indicated that the Special Forces had executed the sailors before taking their own lives, conforming to military edicts that prescribed death before capture. Inside the sunken vessel, records and military equipment were discovered, revealing a disturbing history of repeated incursions into South Korean water, an alarming indicator of ongoing espionage tactics. Guns, grenades, and even South Korean-produced drinks were found, indicating a deep-seated campaign of infiltration and subterfuge. Relegated to a cemetery designated for foreign soldiers of conflict, the dead were interred without the acknowledgement of their homeland. North Korea refused to reclaim the bodies, insisting on their sovereignty over the entirety of the Korean peninsula, positioning the fallen as casualties in a long-standing civil struggle. In subsequent years, interactions at sea between the two Koreas persisted, each skirmish underscoring the fragile stability in the region. Most notably, the sinking of the ROKS Kianan on March 26, 2010, marked a significant escalation in tensions. This event, involving a North Korean torpedo attack that resulted in the tragic loss of 46 South Korean sailors, raised alarms about the enduring volatility of the Korean peninsula. Investigation into the catastrophic sinking concluded that an unidentified North Korean submarine had been responsible. Despite resistance from North Korea to acknowledge the incident, international observers and military experts pointed towards the specifics of torpedo technology employed in the attack as evidence of culpability. While diplomatic relations remain fraught with tension, the fear and anguish experienced by both North and South Koreans serve as chilling reminders of the broader implications of isolation, propaganda, and the struggles for survival in a world dominated by authoritarian rule. The lessons learned from the Kim dynasty's rule and its continuing impact echo through generations, urging future leaders to prioritize humanity, compassion, and the well-being of all citizens, even in the face of power and privilege. Through the shadows of Kim Jong-il's reign and the landscape of suffering endured by the North Korean people, the necessity for awareness and advocacy in the face of oppressive regimes has never been clearer. As the international community reflects on the atrocities that have shaped North Korea, it is crucial to maintain vigilance and shine a spotlight on those living in silence, lest history repeat itself in the darkest of ways. With the hope of a truly unified Korea lingering on the horizon, let us strive to amplify the voices of the oppressed, ensuring that such tales of horror do not fade into obscurity.